Welcome, everyone, to our ISPCAN premiere film event. Today, we're going to be inspiring change through storytelling. So I want to welcome to our session Dr. Claire Cunnington and Chris Godwin, who is the filmmaker for this event. And we're so excited to have you here with us today. It is a world premiere for this documentary. And I think it's going to be an amazing experience for you to see how storytelling can really help you in your work. So just some basic tips for our session today. You're welcome to turn on your camera and get engaged in our conversation later in the event. We just want to make sure that you remain muted during the presentation so that we can just avoid background noise. Feel free to introduce yourself to other attendees in the chat. And then we are going to do a little fun exercise today with Slido. So if you can have your cell phones ready and using your camera icon on your phone, we will be asking you to scan a QR code, and then we can participate in audience polling. So if you can get your phone ready for that, we would love for you to be able to participate. If you have any issues doing that, you're welcome to also type your answers in chat, and someone from our team will input your responses into Slido on your behalf. So please participate. We're excited to have you in the discussion. A recording of the discussion.
You muted yourself.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know when mute got hit, but a recording of the session will be available at the end of the session, and you'll be able to find that on our ISPCAN website. So we just want to let you know that the prevalence of child sexual abuse is enormous. And so we want to make that clear to you that this is something that is not a small problem, as you all know. So we're going to see how we can. I'm sorry, it's a little bit of a delay here in loading, but the prevalence of child sexual abuse is about 18% for women and 8% for men globally. And it is estimated that 1 in 5 victims of serious child sexual assault has never been told or disclosed. So this is still an enormous problem of disclosure. The goal for our session today is that we really want you to understand that how interviews from victims and survivors who are recovering from sexual abuse can be employed in a storytelling mode. And it can help us all to understand better the many angles and issues surrounding child sexual abuse. And this film is really designed to encourage that dialogue between providers and families to really increase and improve the support to victims and survivors. So as you view this film today, we want you to come to your own conclusions, but we hope that it will really be and give you some ideas on how we can use storytelling to aid in survivors' recovery. So we're going to get started with our Slido today, and I would love you to take your cell phones, use the camera icon on your cell phone, and you're going to scan in to this QR code here using your phone, and you will see a yellow banner pop up, and you should be able to click on that, and we will get started with our polling. Just to start us off, we would love to know who's in the room with us today. So if you could please tell us what country you're joining us from today, that would be great, so we can get a sense of who's in the audience. And as we have participants, you'll see the most common answers start to get larger and larger, but we will capture all your answers. So if you live in one country and work in another country, we would love to see that represented as well. So as you see, you can add a response in Slido as we go along, and in any of the questions, you can feel free to enter more than one response. We'll give this a minute, and if you're joining us late, Please use your phone to scan the QR code in the top left corner of your screen and join this initial survey, which is going to our first question is telling us what country are you joining us from today. So this is amazing to see our global community of learning represented so beautifully here. And so for Claire and Chris, this gives them an idea as well as to who is in the audience. It's fantastic, isn't it? So we'll give ourselves a couple more minutes. Pretty much every continent here is represented. Amazing. Well, welcome everyone. So we're going to move on to our second question, which is, we all have kind of an understanding of storytelling. And so we're asking, what are you hoping to learn today from this event? So if you could please, in a word or two, just give us an idea of what you want to learn from this event. And I think this will really give Chris and Claire some great ideas as to how we can use storytelling, what we hope for in the storytelling, and maybe Chris, some notes for you as you think about even your next film. Because I think there's a lot of things we can learn and use storytelling for in this work. Where, re-traumatizing children is often something that people are very reluctant to do. So some of the most common answers we see is really learning how to do effective storytelling, finding out other ways to help survivors, utilizing and evaluating the use of storytelling in research and prevention, more awareness through knowledge, translating research through storytelling, support. It's fantastic. Okay, thank you. So I just want to recognize our speakers who are here with us today. Chris Godwin is the founder and creative director of Inner Eye Productions. He is the filmmaker behind this masterpiece and brings a rich background of production to all his work. And he's worked as a creative director at White Boat TV and the BBC, where he worked on a diverse range of programs, including the BAFTA-nominated series, Short Change. So we're really excited to have you here today, Chris. Welcome. And I'd also like to introduce Dr. Claire Cunnington, and she is a researcher at the Department of Sociological Studies at the University of Sheffield in the UK. And she is herself a survivor of child sexual abuse. So her research focuses on victims and survivors of CSA, and the film Flow was really inspired by her. So I'm going to turn it over to Claire to talk a little bit and give us some background on her work and research. So Claire, you should be able to share your screen now.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Over to you.
Okay. So I hope you can all hear me okay. So first, I just wanted to thank you all for coming to this webinar. I really, really appreciate it. And also thank you to ISPCAN for giving us the opportunity to share this film. We are really, really proud of it. And we hope that you will find it useful in your work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a quick overview of my research before we watch the film. And as Pragati said, I experienced CSA at the age of 6, and it was a significant trauma in my life. However, it was one that I felt that I dealt with as far as is possible. But I wondered how many people with similar experiences as me were doing okay, not perfectly in life, but okay. And I wanted to know what they knew and what they'd learned through the process of dealing with childhood trauma. So I kept an eye on the research over the years, waiting for somebody to do this research that I thought was needed, but it didn't happen. So in the end, I decided, perhaps foolishly, that I could do the research myself. I went back to university and I did a master's in social research to improve my researching skills. And then I was lucky enough to get full funding for my PhD from the Wellcome Trust. So onto the actual research. And this photo, for example, is just from a week ago when I finally got my PhD, because it was postponed so often thanks to COVID. So methodology. Clearly, my research was going to be insider research. And I was determined to be both open about that and reflexive about it. I took a lot of time to think about how I was going to do the research properly. I aimed to recruit people who viewed themselves as further through recovering, and I wanted to take a salutogenic approach. Salutogenesis was developed by Aaron Antonovsky. Salutogenesis is a different way to conceptualize health rather than the standard medical model of pathogenesis. Rather than looking for what causes illness, salutogenesis examines what encourages health. Instead of people being defined in a binary way of either well or ill, it sees health as a continuum. People can either slide towards better health and well-being or towards lower well-being and more illness. And I thought that this was a really useful way to conceptualize health and recovery, particularly after trauma, because people are unlikely to ever be completely unaffected by it. But salutogenics is a way to acknowledge and encourage daily choices towards better self-care, moving the individual towards better health and well-being. The aim is to get closer to what Antonovsky terms coherence, where life is seen as comprehensible, manageable, and meaningful. The entire study was conducted in accordance with the University of Sheffield's regulations on research quality and ethical practice. And I asked, what helps and what hinders your recovery? For the first stage of the study, a survey was shared online, and it was also distributed by charities that support victims and survivors. The survey got 140 responses, and then I followed that up with 21 interviews. And I'll now briefly run through the main results. I've used quotes from participants to illustrate these points, and where these are quotes from interviews, I've given their anonymized names, which many of them chose themselves. So what helps? One answer is people. Just over a quarter of the survey respondents valued relationships as the most important factor for recovering. Charlotte described her relationship with her husband. My partner is the best thing that has ever happened to me. He believes in me, trusts me, and has my absolute welfare always in mind. He gives me faith in humankind. So springing from a safe relationship, the individual can develop more confidence in other people. Furthermore, it creates an arena where emotions can be expressed and responded to in a loving way. A strong, healthy, loving relationship belies the messages from childhood and is in itself healing because it reestablishes trust. This healing can also include professional responses and relationships too. 61 people said that good healthcare was the most important factor in their recovery. And altogether, 107 people said that talking therapies were a positive influence upon recovery. Ruth described a positive interaction with her GP. I ended up having a meltdown in the surgery. I'm just blurting everything out, and she did something which I've never had a GP do before, which was she got up from behind her desk and she knelt on the floor with me and she held my hand, talked to me and calmed me down and told me exactly what she was going to do. I am going to get you help. So what else helps? Sexual abuse disrupts the connection between the mind and the body. In order to escape when their body cannot, the child often mentally runs away through dissociation. Recovering involves reconnecting with your body again. Participants gave 92 examples of exercise and movement that helped with their recovering, and Charlotte described this. Exercise is really important. I feel that it has a very calming effect on me, on my mind, on my body. I love the movement, the motion of it. It gives me a different kind of focus. The movement feels nice, the left-rightness of it all. You feel your arms moving, and I haven't thought about it until now, but I feel unjudged. Creativity evokes a similar reaction, and participants gave 168 positive examples of how creativity helped them. Judith, who's an academic, said, "Writing in particular gives me a safe retreat, a place where I can get satisfaction and distraction in complex ideas and language." And when I was reading all these examples, I realized that there was one thing that actually everybody was talking about, although they were all getting to it in different ways. So the people were describing doing tasks that gave them a sense of absorption and pleasure that I feel reflects Csikszentmihalyi's concept of flow, which is a state created through carrying out a task that is intrinsically rewarding, challenging, but possible, and gives immediate feedback. And this can be created by many things: art, exercise, movement, touch, TV, reading, music, gardening, absolutely anything that you are absorbed by. Creating a flow state is an individualistic endeavor. It creates a temporary fusing of mind and body, a trust that can lead towards a more permanent state of cohesion. Lutz argues that flow is coherence made visible in the present, that creating these frequent states of flow may enable the individual to create or recreate a sense of safety and happiness. But you can only create flow when you're doing something you actually love. So the individual has to choose what they like, which is why yoga does not work for everybody. So what hinders recovering? And this is where we'll talk about responses to disclosure. So informing others about your experience of a traumatic event is a key part of coping with it. Disclosure is not a one-off event, and it's repeated over and over again in a multitude of different contexts, like me disclosing to you all today. There is a tension between this internal desire of the individual to disclose and an external social pressure not to discuss CSA at all. 99 survey respondents described 258 specific examples of poor responses to either disclosure or attempted discussion of CSA and their experience of it. By disclosing abuse, participants were trying to create a safe and coherent environment for themselves. However, they reported significant barriers to achieving this. They worried about how they would be viewed, as Agatha explained. Our lives are pictured as shells, trash, a cloth that can never be washed clean. It is unrealistic and hurtful. 66 of the 140 comments in the survey about what most hindered the process of recovering were about poor responses to talking about CSA. The focus is on what the victim did or didn't do rather than the perpetrator. People who've experienced CSA are talked about as though they are always held in that position of being a child, so that we are infantilized a lot of the time. So disclosure risks being both blamed for the abuse and being seen as ruined by it. The article linked to this webinar by Dr. Tom Clark and myself covers responses to disclosure and how techniques of neutralization are used to discourage people from making them. "33 survey respondents said that family was the single factor most hindering their recovery, with nearly half of survey respondents disclosing a poor family reaction to their trying to disclose abuse. Where details were given, and this was 56 people, there were 17 comments about non-offending family members ignoring or enabling the abuse. 14 people were disbelieved. 8 felt the abuse was minimized. 8 were blamed for the abuse. 7 families supported the abuser over the accuser, and 2 people were disowned." And Ruth explained, "Members of my extended family basically ostracized me because I dragged the family name through the mud and I had made everything public. I had destroyed the safe, quiet. They would rather not have known, and me kept my mouth shut than actually report it and get it stopped." Abuse is seen as shameful for the whole family, who fear that they will all be tainted by it. Counselling and therapy produce the most positive experiences of disclosure. However, respondents describe poor responses from other professionals, including social workers, teachers, doctors, police, and church leaders. One of the first institutions that a person might disclose to is their primary care doctor or nurse. Fred recounted his experience of a poor response from his GP. "I went to my GP and he basically said, 25 years ago, well, it was a long time ago, buddy, suck it up, get over it." To conclude, and this has been a very quick zip through, I believe that a strength-based, individualized approach to recovering is needed. Relationships, both personal and professional, are so important, as is counselling and therapy. Luckily, there are people who create places where emotions can be expressed and shared, and traumatized people can finally be heard. People who've been abused are not passive recipients of care. They are constantly trying to feel better, trying to slide closer to better health and well-being. They should be involved in defining recovery and assisted to identify the actions that will help them move towards that healthier, happier life that we all want. While there is obviously a need for counselling and therapy to assist with the managing of complex PTSD, in order to heal, the individual who has experienced CSA needs to reside in a safe place. This might be within their home, body, work, spirituality, or society. Flow states are really important for this. They are safe, absorbing places, little worlds where the individual is safe and can trust their body. The more an individual has of these, the more their wounds heal. Carly described recovering as, recovering is a verb. It's constantly ongoing, a lifetime of work. It's unfair, but it's also immensely empowering. I'm in control of my own life and my own body in a way that I wasn't when I was being abused. We can't delete trauma, but people who've experienced CSA are capable of being happy, even if they're not in perfect mental health. This is why I use the term recovering, not recovery. Not everyone can be recovered, but everyone can be recovering. This was a really quick run through of my research. As you can see, there appeared to be a real issue about disclosure, and this was something that I really wanted to address, but I wasn't sure how. Then I was contacted by Chris Godwin from Inner Eye Productions about making a film. And next, we're going to watch the film, and afterwards, we will answer any questions you have about the film itself, the process of making it, storytelling, and filmmaking. Thanks.
Thank you, Claire. So I would like to just explain to everyone how we're going to view this film so that we can watch it kind of together. But we tested it several ways, and we feel that if you can please hit the link to the film, click on it in the chat button, we have the link, and you're going to use that link to individually watch the film so that we don't have any issues with sound or the streaming of the movie. It's very difficult to do that over live stream and for it to have a high quality. But we would like you to go ahead now and for the next 25 minutes, watch the film and come back to the Zoom session where we're then going to have an active discussion to talk about how the movie can be used in our work and how you all may be able to continue to utilize it, what you think that ways are that we can utilize it, and we can just have an open discussion. So if you can, please go ahead and leave the Zoom link open and utilize the link in chat that's been provided to watch this 20-minute film. So right now the time is about 7:25 Denver. So we will be back in 25 minutes. I know depending on where you are in the world, that time might change. So please join us back, close to the hour. We're going to be joining back in the Zoom link. So I'm going to welcome all of you to go ahead and watch the link, and you should be finding it in the chat. So along your toolbar, there is a chat button, and there should be a link called captured in the document. Welcome back, everyone. If you're just rejoining us, we are starting to process what we've just watched, and I'd encourage you to use your phone, the camera icon on your phone, to scan the QR code and maybe in a word or two just add your thoughts and emotions, what you're thinking or feeling after having watched this film. We'll give everyone a few minutes to rejoin us. And as you see with this word cloud exercise, the words that are the most common start to get bigger and bigger, but we would love for everyone to, in your own words, tell us how you're feeling after watching the film. What are the key emotions that you're feeling? What do you think our survivor was feeling? So we're going to leave this up for a few minutes as people rejoin us. And in a word or two, please describe. And you can keep adding to this. As you see on Slido, you can, as new feelings and emotions come to you, you're welcome to add more than one word or phrase that describes how you're feeling after watching the film. So we'll give this another minute or two. But it's pretty amazing to see what everyone's emotion is after seeing this film. Some of the bigger ones that seem to be more common are heart-wrenching, sadness, anger, pain, powerful, moved, and inspired, courage, trust, importance of being believed and listened to, family issues hurting the recovery process. That's an interesting one. Triggered. Isolation, secrecy, and shame. So as you're typing in your reactions in response to the film, using the QR code on the top left-hand corner of your screen, I think this will be interesting for Claire and Chris, and for all of you who we hope will really join in the discussion as we start to break down the film and think about how we can utilize it. So I'm going to go on to the next question. And I would love for you to also be thinking about comments and questions that we're going to take next. And we welcome you to turn on your cameras as we have a roundtable discussion. So this next question is kind of more of a reflection based on what the work is that you do and how you see maybe utilizing this film. Or what you think are the key takeaways that we can take from this film and about storytelling in general. So if you want to go ahead in a word or two, type what you think some of the key takeaways are, that would be great. And again, you can add, more than one if you feel. But I think this is really important for us to all reflect about this, because maybe it gives us ideas on how we can utilize the film and storytelling in our future work, depending on what type of work you do. Since ISPCAN is a multidisciplinary audience, it can be interesting to think about what the multiple ways are that we could utilize this. So feel free to enter more than one. If you think there are some key takeaways. And I think this will help all of us get ideas. Look how big listen is. That's fantastic. The importance of education and awareness building. So Chris, as these comments start to come in, I hope you and Claire can also come back and turn on your cameras, everyone. And maybe you can start to process this and open our discussion up with your thoughts about why you made the film and what you were hoping to inspire. So I'd love for you to go ahead and start maybe commenting on that as people continue to add their words and their key takeaways.
Well, it's amazing to see all these responses, and really encouraging that it's kind of bringing up stuff that perhaps Claire and I, hadn't really considered as well. And I think that's the power of film, is everyone brings something to it and have their own interpretation. So that's really, really inspiring and really encouraging. I mean, in terms of the making of this film, I actually made a film on child sexual abuse a few years ago for the Department of Health, and it was about disclosure again, but it was about a young boy disclosing being a victim or survivor of child sexual abuse, and it was an area that really interested me. The film had a lot of traction, and I was keen to see if there was a way of doing some more work in this area. And that's when I came across Claire's research, which I thought was really interesting, really insightful. And so very quickly got in contact with her and said, look, why don't we try and make a film? And Claire was up for it. And I think the combination of the passion that both of us had for the subject matter really kind of drove us forward. And obviously, when you're making a film, the biggest thing that you've got to really struggle with is trying to get the money to make it in the first place. You know, we kind of went down a couple of paths, and then ultimately Claire managed to find the funding. And I think, you know, finding the funding is really about, you know, having the desire to make this film. And I think we both really, really wanted to make it. And I think that really translated to the funders, and that's why we were able to access the funding to this film. So then it was a case of us sort of, you know, once we got the funding, is to, you know, how are we going to make this film? So this film was always going to be building on the research that Claire had done. And the whole idea was it was to take the research that Claire had done and translate it into a medium which was going to be engaging and was going to create an emotional connection with people. And one of our primary objectives was to really try and reach out to the health sector and to health professionals in particular. So hence the story is very much built around the relationships with the doctors. And so that was one of the goals, that we needed to make it relevant to health practitioners. And actually, you know, Claire mentioned it in her intro. There are a couple of stories that really of poor experiences with doctors, but also good experiences with doctors. And one of the ones that Claire actually mentioned was a story of a woman who broke down, was wanting to disclose and was struggling with the disclosure. And it was when the doctor went over to her, knelt by her, held her hand, showed her the warmth and the compassion, and basically said to her, "We're going to help you," which was the first time that anybody had actually said, "We're going to help you." And that was the inspiration behind the final scene in the film. We have that moment where she acknowledges, you know, she says, "We are going to help you, and we're going to do something about it." And for her, that's probably the first thing that really impacted her. And she realized that actually there is somebody who's going to do something about it.
Yeah.
And one of the main inspirations behind the film was one of the interviews that I did as part of the research was with a woman talking about how she'd spent her whole life running away from the abuser and shutting herself off from it, not allowing herself even to accept that she'd been abused. And then at one point decided, no, you know what, I'm going to stand up to this and I'm going to do something about it. And I'm going to turn around. I'm going to face up to this monster that's been following me all my life. And that's what those scenes in the film are, where she's running through the forest. So yeah. It's about sort of, you know, I'm not going to be silenced anymore. I'm going to face up to this, and I'm going to do something about it. And so that was one of the main sort of inspirations behind the story that we wanted to tell. And we also didn't want to feature sexual abuse in the film. We wanted it to, we felt that was perhaps wasn't needed, and we were able to have the metaphor of the running through the forest would kind of did that for us.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I really want to encourage everyone to raise their hands. And I see Chris Weckerly, who has a comment to make. And I think especially for the mental health practitioners who are present with us today, I would love to hear even your ideas and thoughts on how maybe we could utilize a film like this to really help people and families, especially in recovery, may not fully appreciate all the nuances to what survivors go through. So Chris, I'd like to open it up to you to make your comment or ask a question.
Sure, thank you so much. I'm applauding the film and put some comments in the chat as well about it. And I just want to reinforce that decision not to go into very much the content around the abuse. In a way, you can't capture it quite fully because it's so dependent on what the child at age 6 experienced. And so the choice to just have like running or maybe a heartbeat going faster I think that I would applaud that as also very helpful. You don't want to put in a barrier where you would trigger people so much so that they can't watch to the end of the film. So I applaud that choice. And I really like the idea of focusing in on who the helpers can be and who are the very accessible helpers. So the family physician as being the accessible helper is a good place to start. Acknowledging that, this may be the first disclosure that the person has made. And I think what I took from it is also because practitioners can be so hesitant to approach the topic, and I know we have practitioners and physicians watching, they can be so hesitant, they're fearful that they might say the wrong thing. I think the film very powerfully portrayed how it isn't a lot of words that need to be said, and just following very closely what the survivor says, their words, is a really easy to do and a great strategy to convey that empathy. And I just also put in the query that I hope this goes to physician associations and not like typically say psychiatry or pediatrics might be engaged, but more the general physician group, because I think that's a really important piece is to show that you can do it and it can be done with fairly simply and with good effect. So
Without re-traumatizing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, for those comments. And
Can I,
anyone else? Yes.
Sorry,
please
could I
go
just
ahead.
respond to those? Is that okay?
Yes, please.
I just wanted to say that it was really important for me that we didn't have any type of depiction of abuse because it's about recovering, it's about dealing with trauma, and I don't think actually displaying the trauma it wasn't what I wanted to do at all. So that was a really strong decision that we stuck to in coming up with the script. And I think just to say about the getting it shared with clinicians, I am trying to do that, and I want to get it into like GP training at my own university and anywhere else as well. So this is going to be freely available. If you have the connections and you can share it, that would be fantastic. Because I think it does portray a really good way of helping people disclose, because it isn't easy.
Thank you, Claire. Would love for everyone to go up to turn on their cameras. I see Lucia Williams here, so I'm going to pick on you, Lucia, because as a board member, past board member and a mental health provider, I'm curious, Lucia, what your thoughts are after watching the film, and how you think we might be able to utilize it with families and patients, perhaps, so that it could be a learning tool. Any thoughts on that?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. Okay, there's so many ways you could use this film with families. The film shows something that research is very solid about. When a child has no support from the family, recovery is much more difficult, right? And then you keep that inside, and then, the metaphor of the forest is very good. You carry that in your dreams and all that. So it could be used to start a discussion with families, how important it is to hear children, to support children, even though and seek help, because it's a tremendous task, for a parent to face what has possibly happened with their own children. With mental health professionals, I like to think that they by now have a bit more experience with sexual abuse, and they would be more perhaps trained, perhaps empathetic. But with physicians in general, I don't think they do have that experience. And then the film could be very helpful to show that when you have somebody who presents certain body difficulties, and it's trying to speak but can't, there's so many things that you could think of searching for help before just taking pills, like speaking up to somebody, finding somebody that it's reliable, that you trust, that you could perhaps share experience, look for trained mental health professionals and all that. So congratulations, great film.
Claire, any comments or response to that? And I see a few more hands going up, which I appreciate. So any thoughts, Claire or Chris?
I think what we've been interested by is how, we had an idea about how the film could be utilized in training, for example, and as we show it, people we talk to are talking about other ways to use it. And I think that's amazing, that's brilliant. And I'm happy that people can do that. And I'm happy for people to do that. So I'm happy for it to be shared and used in whatever way people think it would help.
Fantastic. And we will be posting it on our ISPCAN website as well. Like most things we do, we can all work together to amplify the effect of great tools and resources that we come across. So we certainly want to encourage that. Tora, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Over to you.
Yes, Tara.
Right.
I run a peer support group and a research nonprofit here in Hong Kong where education levels are even lower on this topic. And I was happy for you, but amused in that GPs here absolutely, in general, do not have any exposure to that. And most therapists are not very trauma informed. But Claire, you just answered a question I had and maybe some advice from you. I was thinking while watching that, this might be a nice tool for survivors who come to our group who are not sure how to approach their family or friends, because we talk about that a lot. People that want to disclose, but it's so difficult. And this might be an opportunity. Of course, there would be a heavy trigger warning, but I'd love to hear from someone who is a mental health care professional what they thought of that plan.
Well, I'm not a mental health care professional, but I guess what I would say from my own experiences, I think the film, I find it very moving. I think that if you're using it with people who have been traumatized, you would need to be careful. And perhaps it would be better to use with families and friends to get them to understand how difficult it is, because I think that people don't necessarily understand how difficult it is and how one negative or even shocked kind of response can actually stop you wanting to talk about it. So, but I mean, obviously you would sort of make your own choices about how to use it.
Yeah, the get over it already, that happened years ago.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that's unusual. I mean, I'm sure it happens fairly commonly in misunderstanding. Abby, over to you.
Hello, everyone. I just want to say thank you for producing this great material. And well, as a physician, we have to face these kind of situations. And I think this is very helpful. And I would like to ask if this material is able to share with colleagues, and if does it have translations to Spanish, for example. I would like to know, and to know if we can use this material to share with colleagues and to help colleagues in these situations.
Claire or Chris, over to you. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the supplementary tools and resources and the film.
Yeah, at the moment we don't have translations, but we would love to have them. So we will certainly look at that. On the website, that on the link, there is also a resource pack with some of the research behind the film, and also some questions and things to consider to use for training. So we've tried to sort of give that, and obviously you can adapt that however you want and use the film however you want. And then finally on that website, there is also a little questionnaire just for me to kind of capture how people are using it and what people want. So so please do fill that in if you use it, because I would really like to know how it's being used.
Fantastic. I would like to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about self-healing and some of what you presented, Claire, about people in conjunction with traditional therapy, finding outlets and positive healing avenues in their own lives. And I'm curious, how commonly known is that? What people, maybe even in our audience, what different ways that people are familiar with that, we can all do or utilize and encourage in victims to help in their recovery. So would love for you to comment on that, Claire, and if anyone else has thoughts about that.
I think things like art therapy or exercise, gardening, things like that, people do know that they are useful for reducing anxiety and dealing with trauma and feeling grounded, basically. However, I think that in many ways, like art therapy, for example, is underfunded in the UK and not as valued as I think it should be, really. And I think if we see it in the way of, trying to create flow, then it really helps to realize why some things just really don't work for people. So people have said to me before, oh, I've tried meditation, but it doesn't work. And it's like, yeah, it's not the right thing for you. So keep trying. There'll be something, and you might already know what it is. There might be, you love sewing or you love poetry or whatever it is. Those are the things that we need to support people to do, really, in their recovery, because they are so important, for reducing anxiety and also learning to sort of connect up with your body again.
Mm-hmm. I thought that was fascinating. Just want to make sure, are there any other comments or questions? Would love for you to raise your hand and participate in your responses or reactions to the film. Any questions for our researcher or filmmaker?
There's some questions in the chat. There's a question for Chris about, was it difficult to find actors willing to act in the movie? Don't know if Chris wants to talk to that one.
No, in short, it wasn't. So, I mean, I think, I suppose for an actor, these are, difficult subject matters and challenging and, required a lot of emotion and performance. Certainly the actor who played Amy, she really had to immerse herself in this character. And certainly for that final scene where she breaks down in the doctor's surgery, she actually came up to me before we shot the scene, and the way we normally shoot things is we shoot the wide shot and then we shoot the close up, because we get the wide shot, we know we've got it, but she said, I don't want to shoot the wide shot first, we've got to go for the close up first, because I don't think I can, this emotion's there and I need to kind of do it now. So we did that, we did the close up, and she, well, you can see in the film that was real emotion coming through there. She found it somehow. But we were very careful to ensure that they felt okay and that there was access to help if they did feel uncomfortable or if they felt that there was something triggering in it. And I don't know whether they maybe some of them might have been triggered, but that certainly wasn't something that came out on set.
It's fantastic. Thank you, Chris. I guess maybe what we can do, if there are not any other questions at this point, maybe you both can share what you feel are some of the key takeaways that you want people to walk away with from this film, and how they might potentially use these materials. Would you like to start, Chris, or Claire? Chris, go ahead, please.
So I think what was interesting for me when we'd made the film, and Claire and I were having a discussion, and she said, you know, we need to make sure people are more aware of you know, child sexual abuse and how prevalent it is. And I suppose my initial response to her saying that was that we have so many safeguarding policies in our big institutions like our schools, and you know, churches and other big organisations where there are children there. I was kind of thinking, well, actually, you know, there is a lot of safeguarding in there. There's a lot going on, but the reality is, yes, there may be in those situations, but the reality is that most of the abuse is going to be happening within the family. And I think that's a really, really kind of key point to me. And it kind of hit me like the thing, oh, right, okay, I'm missing the point here. You know, it's the silence of the family, and it's the way the family conspires to keep that individual away from disclosing. And I think that's something that really needs to be addressed, certainly in this country. I mean, what is the stat in this country, Claire? Was it 88% or something of abuse happens within the family? Is that right?
No, it's about 50. So it's a huge amount of the abuse is either within the family or is in people known to the family. So it's more like 88% is people within the immediate environment of the child. So a community member, you know, a church leader, you know, those sort of people, and then also within the family.
Yeah, so that, I think that was one of the key things. I think in terms of the way the film is being used, I mean, it's very much been designed as to be used in very much the format in which this session's being run, i.e. we show the film, people have an emotional connection to the film, and then hopefully that will stimulate discussion, debate, and self-reflection. So in other films that I've done, the actual watching the film on this platform, this format, has actually led to system and process change as well. So I think I think data is great in terms of looking at a situation, looking at a particular pathway. But if you miss out on that emotional sort of dimension to a pathway, you're actually missing quite a substantial amount of that experience. So what film does is it gives you that emotional way into an issue, and actually gives you kind of some kind of clarity onto, well, how is the system actually impacting on individuals? How is the system actually conspiring to not allow people to disclose? And there have been a number of instances of films that I've made before where, you know, big hospitals have changed the way that they run things because of the discussions and the reactions that the film has made. So I'd really encourage people to use it primarily as a something where you kind of draw the line, and people can sit down, they can watch something, and then have a really kind of meaningful discussion, and hopefully it can lead to, you know, real change.
Yeah, it certainly allows you to draw up into the objective third person point of view and see it a little bit more honestly, whether you're a hospital or a system or a family member. Was really well done in that way. Thank you, Chris. Claire, any other key takeaways or points that you would like to make?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first one would be to repeat, you know, we want you to champion the film and share the film. If you think that it's something that you could use within your environment, within your work, please feel free to do that in whatever way is appropriate. And we do take on board that we need to get translations, that we need to try and look at getting it in different languages. Secondly, just also to say that, you know, do see adults who've experienced CSA. We can contribute to this. You know, we can contribute to research, we can contribute to changing things, and we want to. And then just finally, if you have research that you want to share or change that you want to create, consider film, because it does reach people in different ways. And obviously you can talk to Chris. And they're my key sort of takeaways.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you for having the courage to make this film. And I think it's going to be a great legacy that people can continue to use. And I don't know how much this costs, Chris, but maybe we can get a little discount if we have ideas on making future films. And I think it really does bring to light how much we want to encourage and recognize that disclosure is not a one-time thing, and how we can continue to help victims in their survival. So Jane, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. I think we can bring the session to close, and you might want to unmute.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. Just a special thank you to Chris and Claire. This film was hard-hitting, it was powerful. It brought voice to what our members do on a day in and day out basis. And I hope you saw the comments in the chat box. I think that there will be an incredible lasting and ripple impact from this. So thank you so much. Just a reminder to everyone, I think we've covered it a couple times, but what you will receive after this session is a link to the film. As Chris and Claire both said, this is now a public showing after this session. So they were wonderful to hold, really releasing this to the public till we could do this really kind of intimate screening. So thank you so much. You'll have a recording from the discussion that took place after the film. And then the resource package that Claire referenced will also be included, a link to that in the follow-up email, as well as a certificate of attendance for this webinar. We also wanted to, really coming off the heels of this film, talk about some upcoming events at ISPCAN. November kicks off our prevention campaign. This is an international campaign from November 1st to November 19th. It will end on World Day for the Prevention of Child Abuse and Neglect. And we have some really exciting things happening. We have really 19 days of prevention tips and tools and resources shared by members, colleagues, our country partners, or international partners. Those will all be sent out on social media. They'll be posted on our website. We'd love for you to engage in this prevention campaign. Our hashtag is Rise Up to End Child Abuse. You'll see it on the screen. And again, if you have tips and tools and resources you would like us to also make part of this campaign, please reach out to us. And again, you can use this hashtag to do that as well. Other upcoming events, really part of this prevention campaign is we have two very special webinar and training presentations. The first will be done by Dr. Sean Singleton and Barbara Gordon. And they are also recruiting a panel of hosts to supplement their topic, which is protecting children from maltreatment across all ages and in challenging times. They'll discuss the benefits of utilizing community resources to strengthen family and reduce harm. There'll be parenting tips and prevention strategies for various age groups from infant through teens. And there'll be an entire family focus of screening tools, including intimate partner violence and mental health of parents. So that will be on November 9th, and you'll see marketing materials come out on that shortly. Also, as to end our prevention campaign on November 17th, Zlatina Kostova and Dr. Brooks Keeshan will also present a webinar on trauma-informed mental health care, prevention in children at risk, and increasing resilience in traumatized children. And it really will be one country's system of care, you know, kind of as a best example and tools to work from. So I hope you can join us for both those two webinars. And I hope you really can engage in us in this prevention campaign. Because again, if we can get out in front of the issue, as this film shows, the collateral damage can be avoided. Just upcoming events that will happen in December and January, you can read. We'll have a journal club, The Rise of Economic Inequality and Its Consequences for Child Protection by Andreas Judd and David Rothwell. And there'll be two webinars that will really highlight the results from a survey that we did with ISPCC of frontline practitioners, and that's by Karma Katz and her team. And mostly we are excited for all of you to join us, but we know that many of you in the audience are not ISPCAN members as of yet. And again, we would love to have you engage with us on just a broader level. ISPCAN membership starts as low as $35 a year. You can see the benefits on the screen. And really, this $35 also gives you a subscription to our peer-reviewed academic journal, Child Abuse and Neglect, which was rated #1 on Google Scholar for social work. So again, if you have any questions on becoming an ISPCAN member, you can reach out to Holly at memberships@ispcan.org or visit our website. But mostly a sincere thank you for all of us joining today, and for Chris and Claire for just the amazing work that you did with this film. It has impacted all of us. So sincere appreciation.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night or a great morning wherever you are in the world. And we really appreciate you being champions for children. So on behalf of our team at ISPCAN, and thank you to Chris and Claire again, we appreciate you joining us today. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.